You know what you should do. You've read the books, watched the videos, taken the courses. You understand the principles. You know the steps. You've got the knowledge. But you're not doing it. You're not taking action. You're stuck in analysis, paralyzed by planning, trapped in preparation. You're learning endlessly but executing rarely. This is the gap that destroys dreams. Not lack of knowledge, not lack of understanding, lack of action. The inability to translate what you know into what you do. The failure to move from thinking to doing. Most self-help focuses on knowledge. Learn this principle. Understand this concept. Study this approach. As if knowing were enough. As if understanding automatically led to action. But you already know this isn't true. You know plenty that you don't do. The real challenge isn't learning more. It's forcing yourself to act on what you already know. It's overcoming the resistance that keeps you stuck. It's breaking through the barriers between knowing and doing. It's creating momentum when everything in you wants to stay still. This audiobook is about exactly that. Not about what you should do, but how to force yourself to actually do it. Not more knowledge, but mechanisms that create action regardless of motivation, mood, or readiness. Because here's the truth. You'll never feel completely ready. You'll never have perfect clarity. You'll never eliminate all uncertainty. If you wait for these things, you wait forever. You must learn to act despite them. Think about your current situation. You probably have goals you've been thinking about for months or years, projects you've been planning but not starting, changes you've been contemplating but not making, skills you've been meaning to develop but haven't practiced. Why haven't you acted? Not because you don't know what to do, because something stops you from doing what you know. Fear, perfectionism, overwhelm, lack of confidence. Whatever the specific barrier, the result is the same. Inaction, stagnation, unrealized potential. This pattern will continue unless you learn to force action, not through willpower alone, which depletes, not through motivation alone, which fluctuates, but through systems and strategies that make action inevitable, regardless of internal state. We'll explore 10 powerful forcing mechanisms, understanding why you don't act, creating consequences that demand action, eliminating escape routes systematically, using commitment devices effectively, building accountability that works, making inaction painful, creating urgency artificially, starting before you're ready, taking action despite fear, and maintaining momentum once started. These aren't gentle suggestions. They're aggressive interventions designed to override your resistance and force you into action. They work when motivation doesn't. They function when willpower fails. They create movement when everything else keeps you stuck. But I need to be honest with you. Forcing yourself to act is uncomfortable. It means doing things when you don't feel like it, starting before you're ready, moving despite fear, pushing through resistance. This discomfort is why most people stay stuck. They'd rather be comfortable and stagnant than uncomfortable and growing. Can you accept discomfort? Can you move despite not feeling ready? Can you act even when afraid? If yes, then action becomes possible. If no, then nothing changes. Because here's what happens when you learn to force action. You stop being dependent on feeling right. You start creating results, regardless of mood. You develop the capability to execute when others are still preparing. You build momentum that compounds. You prove to yourself that you can do hard things. You transform from thinker to doer. Right now, you're probably thinking of reasons why forcing yourself won't work for you. Your situation is different. Your obstacles are unique. Your challenges are special. These thoughts are resistance speaking. They're the voice that keeps you stuck. Recognize them for what they are. The people who achieve significant things aren't fundamentally different from you. They don't have supernatural willpower. They don't lack fear. They don't feel ready all the time. The difference is, they've learned to act anyway. They've developed forcing mechanisms that override resistance. You can develop the same capability. Not through being harder on yourself, not through generating more motivation, but through implementing systems that make action the path of least resistance. That make inaction harder than action. that remove your ability to stay comfortable in stagnation. 6 months from now, you'll be somewhere. The question is whether you'll have taken action and created results, or whether you'll still be thinking about it, planning it, preparing for it. The difference is whether you learn to force action or continue waiting for readiness. A year from now, will you look back at today as when you finally broke through inaction? Or will you have another year of plans unmade, projects unstarted, changes unconsidered? The gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't crossed by knowledge. It's crossed by action. And action doesn't happen automatically. It must be forced when resistance is high and motivation is low. This is your opportunity. Not to learn more, but to do more. Not to understand better, but to execute actually. Not to prepare endlessly, but to start immediately. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop hoping for motivation. Stop preparing for perfect conditions. Learn to force yourself to act, regardless of these things. Let's learn exactly how to do that. Let's develop forcing mechanisms that create action. Let's break through the barrier between knowing and doing. How to force yourself to take action. Not someday. Not when ready. Now. Chapter 1. Understand why you don't act. Before you can force action, you need to understand what prevents it. The barrier isn't usually what you think. It's not lack of time, or resources or knowledge. It's psychological resistance that manifests as excuses. Let me explain what's really happening when you don't act. Your brain is designed to conserve energy and avoid risk. Action requires energy. Action involves risk of failure. Your brain naturally resists both. This resistance is automatic, not rational. It doesn't care about your goals. It cares about comfort and safety. When you think about taking action on something important, your brain generates resistance. This feels like various things. Sometimes it feels like you're not ready. Sometimes it feels like you need more information. Sometimes it feels like the timing isn't right. Sometimes it feels like fear or anxiety. Sometimes it feels like lack of motivation. These feelings are real, but they're not the truth. They're resistance dressed up as reasonable concerns. Your brain is creating these feelings to prevent the discomfort of action. It's protecting you from the energy expenditure and risk that action requires. Here's how to recognize resistance. It sounds reasonable. I should learn more before starting. Reasonable. I should wait until I have more time. Reasonable. I should plan more thoroughly. Reasonable. But these reasonable-sounding thoughts prevent action indefinitely. Resistance also creates endless preparation. You research endlessly. You plan exhaustively. You learn continuously. All of this feels productive. It feels like you're working toward your goal. But if you never actually start, all this preparation is just sophisticated procrastination. Resistance loves analysis paralysis, overthinking every angle, considering every possibility, anticipating every problem. This thinking feels necessary, but often it's just resistance keeping you from the discomfort of actually doing. Let me tell you about the action threshold. This is the point at which thinking must stop and doing must start. Most people never reach this threshold. They stay in thinking indefinitely. They convince themselves they need more preparation, more clarity, more confidence, more something. This more is always just out of reach. It's resistance's way of keeping you stuck. Here's what you need to understand. You will never feel completely ready. Never. Even after all the preparation, you'll still feel unprepared when it's time to act. This feeling of unreadiness is normal. It's not a sign you shouldn't act. It's actually a sign that you're at the point where action is needed. Fear is another major barrier. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of success. Fear of discovering you can't do it. Fear of discovering you can. These fears feel like protection. Your brain generates them to keep you safe. But they're keeping you safe from growth, not from actual danger. The key insight is this. These barriers, resistance, fear, the feeling of not being ready, they don't go away through more preparation. They go away through action despite them. Action proves to your brain that the feared consequences don't materialize, that taking action is survivable, that you're more capable than your fears suggest. But your brain won't give up resistance easily. It will keep generating reasons to wait. Keep creating feelings of unreadiness. Keep manufacturing fears. This is why you must force action. Waiting for resistance to disappear means waiting forever. Forcing action despite resistance is the only path forward. Understanding this changes everything. When you feel not ready, you recognize it as resistance, not truth. When you think, I need to learn more first, you identify it as sophisticated procrastination. When you experience fear, you see it as your brain's automatic response, not accurate assessment of danger. This understanding doesn't eliminate these feelings, but it stops you from treating them as valid reasons not to act. You expect resistance. You recognize it when it appears. You act anyway. Let me give you perspective. Every person who's achieved something significant felt all these things. They felt unprepared. They experienced resistance. They faced fear. The difference is they acted despite these feelings, rather than waiting for them to disappear. You're experiencing normal human psychology, not special obstacles. Your resistance isn't uniquely powerful. Your fears aren't unusually legitimate. Your feeling of unreadiness isn't more valid than anyone else's. These are universal experiences. What varies is whether people let them prevent action. Think about the last time you finally took action on something you'd been avoiding. You probably felt all the same doubts and fears beforehand. But once you started, they diminished. The resistance was strongest before action, not during it. This is always true. Resistance peaks at the moment before starting, then decreases once you're in motion. This is why starting is crucial. Not because you feel ready, because starting breaks resistance's power. Once in motion, continuing is easier than starting. But you must force that first action when resistance is highest. Here's what I want you to do. Identify something you've been avoiding. Notice the thoughts and feelings that arise when you consider doing it. These are resistance. Don't believe them. Don't wait for them to disappear. Recognize them as your brain's automatic response to the prospect of action. Then act despite them. Understanding why you don't act doesn't automatically create action. But it removes the illusion that your reasons for not acting are valid. It reveals them as resistance, not reality. And that makes forcing action possible. Understand that you don't act because your brain resists action automatically. Recognize resistance in its various disguises. Stop treating feelings of unreadiness as truth. Prepare to act despite them. Chapter 2. Create consequences that demand action. The most powerful way to force action is creating consequences. Real consequences. Immediate consequences. Consequences painful enough to overcome resistance. Most people try to create action through positive motivation, thinking about how good success will feel, visualizing desired outcomes. These help, but they're weak compared to consequences. Humans are more motivated by avoiding loss than gaining rewards. Use this psychological reality strategically. Here's how to create consequences that demand action. First, put money at stake. Significant money, not $5. Money that actually hurts to lose. Maybe $50, maybe $100, maybe more, if you can afford it. Commit that if you don't complete specific action by specific deadline, you lose the money. Where does the money go? The key is making it genuinely painful. Option 1. To a cause you hate. Political group you oppose. Organization you despise. This creates double pain. You lose money and it goes to something you don't want to support. Option 2. Simply forfeit it. Give it to someone who will donate it randomly or keep it. The loss itself is the consequence. Use services like BeMinder or StickK that formalize this. You set goal. You commit money. You track progress. If you fail, money gets donated to charity you chose or anti-charity you hate. The system is automatic. No backing out. No excuses. The consequence is real. Second, create social consequences. Public commitment with public accountability. Tell people specifically what you'll do, and by when. Not vague statement like, I'm going to start exercising. Specific commitment like, I will work out 5 times this week and post proof daily. Now social pressure becomes consequence. Failing means publicly admitting failure, explaining to people why you didn't follow through, damaging your credibility. Make it even stronger by adding forfeit to social commitment. If I don't complete this by Friday, I'll donate $100 to charity and post video explaining my failure. Now you have financial and social consequences combined. Powerful motivation to act. Third, create opportunity consequences. Structure situations where inaction costs you concrete opportunities. Pay for event or program in advance. Non-refundable. Now, not participating means wasting money you've spent. Sign up for competition or commitment with entry deadline. Now, not preparing means showing up unprepared or backing out embarrassingly. Book sessions with trainer, coach, or consultant. Prepay for multiple sessions. Now, not using them means wasting significant money. Schedule meetings or presentations where you'll share your progress. Now you must have progress to share or face explaining why you don't. Fourth, create professional consequences. Tell your boss or colleagues about project you're taking on. Now delivering becomes tied to professional reputation. Announce launch date for product or service publicly. Now, launching on time affects business credibility. Make commitments to clients or customers. Now delivering affects your income and reputation. These professional consequences are powerful because they affect more than just you. They affect your career, income, and reputation in lasting ways. The stakes are high enough to overcome substantial resistance. Fifth, use progressive consequences. Start with mild consequence for first failure. Increase consequence for second failure. Make third failure severe. This acknowledges that single failures happen while making patterns of failure increasingly costly. Example: first missed workout costs $10, second costs $25, third costs $50, fourth costs $100. The escalation makes repeated failures unsustainable. Here's what makes consequences work. They must be immediate, not distant. I'll lose money today. Works. I might regret this in a year. Doesn't. They must be certain, not possible. I will definitely lose this money. Works. I might face some negative outcome. Doesn't. They must be painful, not trivial. Losing amount you actually care about works. Losing amount you'd easily pay for convenience doesn't. Let me address a concern. Won't this make action feel forced and negative? Yes, initially. That's the point. You're forcing action you wouldn't otherwise take. But here's what happens. Once you start acting consistently because of consequences, the action becomes easier. Habits form. Confidence builds. Eventually, you need less external forcing. But initially, you need the consequences to break through resistance. Think of consequences as training wheels. They force correct action while you're developing the capability to act on your own. Eventually, you may not need them. But initially, they're crucial for creating action when internal motivation fails. Some people resist creating consequences because they don't want to be that hard on themselves. This is resistance talking. It's your brain preferring comfortable inaction over uncomfortable growth. If you're serious about forcing action, consequences are non-negotiable. They work when nothing else does. Here's how to implement this. Choose one important action you've been avoiding. Define it specifically with clear deadline. Decide meaningful consequence for not completing it. Put money at stake through formal commitment service. Add social accountability by telling people. Schedule it so inaction costs you opportunity. Make the consequence real, immediate, and painful. Then act. Not because you feel motivated. Because the consequence of not acting is worse than the discomfort of acting. This is forcing action. This is how you override resistance. This is how you move from thinking to doing. Over time, as you stack these forced actions, something shifts. You develop confidence in your ability to execute. You build identity as someone who follows through. You create momentum that makes future actions easier. But initially, you need consequences to force the actions that start this process. Create consequences that demand action. Make them real, immediate, and painful. Let the threat of loss overcome your resistance to effort. Chapter 3. Eliminate escape routes. Systematically, you don't act because you have escape routes. Ways to avoid doing what you know you should do. Comfortable alternatives to difficult action. These escape routes are why consequences alone sometimes aren't enough. You need to close the exits systematically. Let me explain what escape routes are. They're the paths of least resistance that lead away from action. The distractions you turn to when faced with difficult work. The excuses you use to justify inaction. The alternatives you choose instead of what matters. Your phone is an escape route. When work gets hard, you check it. Social media is an escape route. When focus requires effort, you scroll. Entertainment is an escape route. When you should be building, you're watching. These aren't inherently bad things. They become problems when they're escape routes from action. Here's how to identify your escape routes. What do you do instead of what you should do? When you know you should be working on your project, what do you actually do? When you know you should be practicing your skill, where does your attention go? These alternatives are your escape routes. They let you avoid discomfort of action while feeling like you're doing something. The solution is eliminating escape routes systematically. Make it difficult or impossible to take the easy path. Remove the comfortable alternatives. Close the exits. Force yourself into situations where action is the only option. Start with digital escape routes. Your phone is probably your primary one. During work time, put it in another room. Not just across the room. Another room entirely. Or in your car. Or give it to someone else to hold. Make accessing it require actual effort. This friction is usually enough to prevent mindless reaching for it. Better yet, use apps that block phone functionality during specified times. Set them to disable social media, games, and distracting apps during your work hours. Now the escape route is physically blocked. You can't escape to your phone even if you want to. On your computer, use website blockers. Block social media, news sites, entertainment sites during work time. Make the blocking password protected so you can't easily disable it. Now those escape routes are closed. When you try to escape to them, you're blocked and must return to actual work. Physical escape routes need elimination too. If you escape to TV, unplug it and put it in closet. If you escape to snacking, remove all snack food from your space. If you escape to comfort of couch, remove the option by working somewhere without a couch. Make escape physically impossible or significantly effortful. Time-based escape routes are subtle. I'll do it later is an escape route. I'll start tomorrow is an escape route. I'll begin after this other thing is an escape route. Close these by creating now or never situations. Tell someone you'll show them your work in 1 hour. Schedule meeting where you must present progress. Create deadlines with consequences that make later impossible. Social escape routes need addressing. Friends who enable procrastination. Family who accept your excuses. Colleagues who validate your inaction. These people, however well-meaning, provide escape routes through social permission to not act. Create distance during your action periods. Don't share your struggles with people who'll let you off the hook. Share only with people who'll hold you accountable. Excuse-based escape routes are mental, but must be closed. Your common excuses for inaction. Write them down. I don't have time. I'm not ready. I need to learn more first. The timing isn't right. These are escape routes. Pre-commit to acting regardless. When the excuse arises, recognize it as escape route and act anyway. Let me tell you about burning the boats. This is the ultimate escape route elimination. When ancient armies invaded new territory, commanders sometimes burned their own boats. No retreat was possible, victory or death. This forced total commitment. You can do similar things. Quit your job to force your business to work. Announce your launch date publicly before the product is ready. Register for competition before you're prepared. These actions eliminate retreat as option. Most people won't do this because it's terrifying. The escape route feels like safety. But it's false safety. It's the safety of comfortable stagnation. Burning the boats creates real fear, but also real commitment. Sometimes forcing yourself to act requires making inaction impossible. Here's a less extreme version. Create minimum viable commitment. Instead of burning all boats, Eliminate specific escape routes relevant to specific actions. For your morning workout, eliminate the sleep-in escape route by putting alarm across room and committing to someone that you'll send workout photo by certain time. For your evening project work, eliminate the watch TV escape route by not having TV in your workspace and blocking entertainment websites. The principle is the same. Identify the specific escape routes relevant to specific actions you're trying to force. Then, systematically close them. Make the escape routes harder to take than the action itself. This reverses the typical dynamic, where escape is easy and action is hard. Let me address discomfort. Eliminating escape routes feels constraining. You'll feel trapped. That's the point. You are trapped into action. This feels uncomfortable because you're used to escape routes. But this discomfort is temporary. Once action becomes habitual, you won't need escape routes eliminated. But initially, you need this forcing mechanism. Think about this. You've tried leaving escape routes open. You've tried willpower while distractions remain accessible. You've tried motivation while comfort is always available. Has it worked? Probably not consistently. This is why systematic elimination of escape routes is necessary. It forces action by removing alternatives. Here's your implementation. List your primary escape routes, the things you do instead of what you should do, the excuses you use, the comfortable alternatives. Then, for each one, design elimination strategy: physical removal, digital blocking, social distance, pre-commitment that prevents excuse, schedule that makes later impossible. Implement these eliminations before your next action period. Don't trust yourself to resist escape routes in the moment. Eliminate them in advance. Then, when action time comes, action is your only option. You've forced yourself into doing what you know you should do. Eliminate escape routes systematically. Close the exits. Remove comfortable alternatives. Make action the path of least resistance by making inaction impossible. Chapter 4. Use commitment devices. Effectively, commitment devices are tools that lock in future action now, before resistance can stop you. They're powerful forcing mechanisms because they work with human psychology rather than against it. Here's how commitment devices work. In your current state, you're relatively rational and motivated. You can see clearly that you should take certain actions, but future you, when action is required, will be less motivated and more resistant. Future, you will want to take the easy path. Commitment devices bind future you to current you's intentions. Let me give you examples. Prepaying for something is a commitment device. When you prepay for gym membership, personal training sessions, or workshop registration, you've committed money. Future you feels pressure not to waste that money. The loss aversion creates motivation to follow through. You're using your current willingness to spend to force future action. Scheduling is a commitment device. When you schedule specific time for specific action, you've committed that time. You've made it harder for future you to do something else instead, especially if you've told others about the schedule or put it on shared calendar. The commitment creates obligation that forces action. Public declaration is a commitment device. When you announce intention publicly, you've committed your reputation. Future you faces social pressure to follow through or face embarrassment of public failure. The commitment leverages social motivation to force action. Automatic systems are commitment devices. When you set up automatic payment to savings, automatic delivery of healthy food, automatic scheduling of important activities, you've committed future you to these actions without requiring future decision. The automation forces action by removing choice. Here's how to use commitment devices effectively. First, use them while you're motivated. Don't wait until you feel resistant to create commitment. Create it when you're clear-headed and motivated. Current you commits future you before future you can object. Second, make commitment significant enough to matter. Small commitments are easy to break. Large commitments create real pressure. If you prepay for 3 training sessions, that's nice. If you prepay for 20, that's serious commitment. If you tell one friend about your goal, that's something. If you announce it to everyone on social media, That's real commitment. Third, make commitment specific and measurable. I'm going to exercise more is too vague to create real commitment. I will work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. for 45 minutes, and post photo proof is specific enough to hold you accountable. Fourth, stack multiple commitment devices. Don't rely on just one. Use several simultaneously. Prepay for training. Schedule specific times. Tell friends. Create financial stakes. Track publicly. Each device independently forces action. Together they make inaction nearly impossible. Let me tell you about Ulysses contracts. Named after Odysseus, who had himself tied to mast to resist Siren's song. A Ulysses contract is commitment you make now that restricts your future choices. You're binding future you because you know future you will be tempted to quit. Example: giving your credit card to trusted friend and telling them not to return it until you've completed certain work. Future: you can't make impulse purchases that distract from work. You've removed that option. Or using apps that lock you out of distracting websites until you've completed certain tasks. Future: you can't access distractions. The option is removed. These feel extreme, but they work precisely because they're extreme. They don't trust future you to make good decisions. They remove future you's ability to make bad decisions. Here are powerful commitment devices you can implement immediately. First, cash commitment. Put $100 in envelope. Give it to friend. Tell them if you haven't completed specific action by specific date, they donate it to cause you hate. Now you have real money at stake with no takebacks. Second, schedule commitment. Book 5 sessions with trainer, coach, or consultant. All paid in advance. Non-refundable. Now you've committed money and time. Not showing up means wasting both. The commitment forces preparation and participation. Third, social commitment. Post on all social media that you're doing specific thing by specific date. Ask people to hold you accountable. Now public reputation is at stake. Hundreds of people know your commitment. Not following through means explaining to all of them why you failed. Fourth, opportunity commitment. Register for event, competition, or program with entry deadline and non-refundable fee. Now you've committed to being ready by certain date. Not being ready means wasting entry fee and either not participating or participating unprepared and embarrassed. Fifth, technology commitment. Use apps like BeMinder that charge you real money if you don't meet your commitments. Set aggressive goals with significant financial penalties for missing them. The app is automated and unforgiving. You can't talk your way out of consequences. Here's what makes commitment devices different from willpower. Willpower depends on your state in the moment. If you're tired, stressed, or unmotivated, willpower fails. Commitment devices work regardless of your state. They create external pressure that forces action, even when internal motivation is absent. Think of commitment devices as future insurance. You're insuring against future you's weakness by creating commitments now. You know future. You will be tempted to skip the work. So current you creates commitments that future you can't escape. Some people resist commitment devices because they want to maintain flexibility. This is resistance talking. It's your brain wanting to keep escape routes open. True commitment requires burning those escapes. If you're serious about forcing action, eliminate flexibility that enables inaction. Let me address fear of commitment. You might worry about committing to something, and then circumstances genuinely preventing it. This is possible, but it's much more rare than you think. Usually, circumstances are just excuses. Real emergencies are rare. Most barriers to action are manufactured by resistance. Make commitment anyway. Risk the possibility of genuine, unavoidable circumstances preventing action. This risk is small compared to the near certainty that without commitment, resistance will prevent action. Commitment devices trade small risk of bad luck for large reduction in risk of self-sabotage. Here's your action step. Choose one important action you've been avoiding. Create 3 commitment devices for it right now. Money commitment, social commitment, schedule commitment. Make them real, public, and binding. Then watch how these commitments force you to act when your motivation alone wouldn't. Use commitment devices effectively. Commit future you while current you is willing. Make commitments significant, specific, and stacked. Remove future you's ability to choose inaction. Chapter 5. Build accountability that works. Accountability is powerful, but most people do it wrong. They create weak accountability that's easy to dodge. What you need is aggressive accountability that makes inaction impossible. Let me explain the difference between weak and strong accountability. Weak accountability is telling someone about your goal and hoping they remember to ask about it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Easy to avoid. Strong accountability is scheduling specific check-ins, where you must report specific metrics to someone who will actually call you out for not delivering. Weak accountability is sharing your intentions on social media once. Strong accountability is committing publicly to post daily progress updates with objective proof, knowing people will notice if you stop. Weak accountability is having vague conversation about wanting to improve. Strong accountability is paying someone to hold you to specific standards with specific consequences for missing them. The key principle is this: accountability only works if it's unavoidable and uncomfortable to fail. If you can easily skip it, ignore it, or make excuses to it, it's not real accountability. Real accountability corners you, puts you on the spot, demands evidence, makes inaction obvious and uncomfortable. Here's how to build accountability that works. First, choose accountability partners carefully. Don't choose friends who will let you off easy. Choose people who will be demanding, who won't accept excuses, who will call you out when you're slacking. This might be coach you pay, might be friend who's extremely disciplined, might be group that has high standards. Key is, they won't enable your inaction. Second, make accountability structured and frequent. Not, let me know how it goes, but scheduled, specific check-ins. Every Monday at 9 a.m., you report to your accountability partner. You tell them specifically what you accomplished last week toward your goal. They ask hard questions. They point out where you fell short. They don't accept vague progress. They demand objective evidence. Weekly is minimum frequency. For major pushes, make it daily. Daily check-in where you must report that day's action. This creates constant pressure to act because you know you'll need to report progress in hours, not days. Third, use objective metrics in accountability. Not, I worked on it, but I completed 3 hours, finished these 2 tasks, and created these specific outputs. Objective metrics can't be faked or minimized. Either you did the thing or you didn't. Either the result exists or it doesn't. Objectivity makes accountability real. Fourth, add stakes to accountability. Tell your accountability partner that if you miss your commitment, you pay them $50, or donate it to cause you hate, or perform some embarrassing forfeit. The stakes make accountability bite. Without stakes, accountability is just conversation. With stakes, it's real consequence. Fifth, make accountability public when possible. Private accountability to one person is good. Public accountability to many is better. Post your commitments publicly. Report progress publicly. Make your actions or inactions visible to large group. Public shame for failure is powerful motivator. Let me tell you about accountability groups versus individual accountability. Groups have advantages. Multiple people watching creates more pressure. Group members support each other. Seeing others act motivates you to act. But groups can also enable collective mediocrity. If the group accepts low standards, everyone slides. Individual accountability to demanding person avoids this. One person with high standards, who won't accept your excuses. This is simpler and often more effective than group where standards might dilute. Here are specific accountability structures that work. First, paid coaching with regular check-ins. You pay someone to hold you accountable. They check in weekly or daily. They review your progress. They challenge your excuses. They hold you to the standards you committed to. Paying makes it real. You don't want to waste money on sessions where you report inaction. Second, accountability partnerships with reciprocal stakes. Find someone with similar goal. Each week, you both must complete specific actions. Whoever doesn't complete theirs pays the other $20. Mutual stakes plus not wanting to let partner down creates double pressure. Third, mastermind groups with mandatory attendance and participation. Group meets weekly. Each person reports progress. Group holds each person accountable. If you miss meeting, you pay group fine. If you don't have progress to report, group calls you out. The structure is formal and demanding. Fourth, public tracking with committed audience. Post daily updates on social media or blog. Commit to posting daily for 90 days. Ask people to comment and hold you accountable. Now hundreds or thousands of people are watching. Missing a day means everyone notices. Lack of progress means public failure. Fifth, competitive accountability. Find person also working towards similar goal. Make it competition. Who can complete more? Who stays consistent longer? Who achieves their goal first? Competition leverages pride and desire to win. You don't want to lose, so you push harder. Here's what makes accountability work. You must be willing to be uncomfortable. Reporting failure to your accountability partner is uncomfortable. Admitting publicly you didn't do what you committed to is uncomfortable. Paying money when you don't deliver is uncomfortable. This discomfort is the mechanism. It makes you act to avoid it. If you're not feeling pressure from your accountability system, it's too weak. Strengthen it. Make check-ins more frequent. Make standards more demanding. Make consequences more painful. Make accountability more public. Keep increasing pressure until inaction becomes unbearable. Let me address manipulation of accountability. You might try to game the system. Choose easy targets. Report partial progress as full success. Make excuses your accountability partner accepts. This is self-sabotage. You're maintaining comfort while pretending you have accountability. For accountability to work, you must be brutally honest and choose accountability partners who demand brutal honesty from you. Think about athletes and their coaches. The coach demands specific performance, doesn't accept excuses, pushes through resistance. This demanding accountability is why athletes achieve what they couldn't achieve alone. You need similar accountability even if you're not athlete. Someone who demands your best and won't accept less. Here's your implementation. Choose one major goal. Identify 3 forms of accountability for it. Paid coach or demanding friend for weekly check-ins. Public commitment for daily or weekly progress posts. Accountability partner with stakes for mutual motivation. Implement all 3 simultaneously. Make the combined accountability so strong that inaction becomes impossible. Then submit to the accountability. Don't try to dodge it. Don't make excuses. Don't skip check-ins. Show up. Report honestly. Accept challenge when you fall short. Let the accountability push you to act when your motivation wouldn't. Build accountability that works. Make it structured, frequent, and demanding. Add stakes. Make it public. Create pressure so strong that action becomes easier than facing your accountability. Chapter 6. Make inaction painful. You avoid action because inaction is comfortable. It's easy. It requires no effort. It involves no risk. To force action, you must make inaction painful, not theoretical future pain. Immediate, real, present pain. Most people try to make action attractive and leave inaction comfortable. This doesn't work because action requires effort while inaction doesn't. Comfort always wins when action is hard and inaction is easy. You must reverse this dynamic. Make inaction harder than action. Make staying stuck more painful than moving forward. Here's how to make inaction painful. First, create immediate financial consequences for inaction. Not distant possibility of regret. Actual money lost today. Set up automatic system where every day you don't act, you lose money. Beeminder does this. You commit to specific action at specific frequency. Miss it, and money gets charged from your account immediately. The pain is immediate and real. Or create manual consequence. Every morning, if you didn't complete yesterday's committed action, you immediately donate $50 to cause you hate. Don't delay it. Don't make excuses. Immediate payment as penalty for inaction. The pain is certain and immediate. Second, make inaction socially painful. Commit to posting daily whether you did your action or not. If you did it, post proof and celebration. If you didn't, post admission of failure and explanation. Now, inaction means publicly admitting weakness to everyone watching. The social pain of repeated public admissions of failure becomes unbearable. You act to avoid it. Or tell someone demanding that you'll call them every evening to report whether you acted. If you didn't, they get to criticize you, to express disappointment, to question your commitment. This daily social pain for inaction becomes powerful motivator to act. Third, make inaction boring and uncomfortable. Remove all entertainment and comfort activities until you've completed your action. No TV, no social media, no games, no fun until work is done. Now, inaction isn't comfortable relaxation. It's boring discomfort. You're stuck with nothing to do except the thing you're avoiding. The boredom becomes painful enough that doing the work becomes relief. Fourth, make inaction feel like betrayal of self. Keep journal where you write daily, whether you acted, when you didn't act. Write about how you let yourself down, about how you're failing to become who you want to be, about how you're proving you can't trust yourself. Reading these entries of self-disappointment becomes painful. You act to avoid writing them. Or keep counter of days since you last acted. Watch it grow when you don't act. Each day of inaction makes the number bigger. The growing number becomes painful evidence of your stagnation. You act to reset it to 0. Fifth, make inaction costly an opportunity. Structure situation where every day of inaction means missing opportunity. Maybe you've told client you'll deliver by certain date. Each day of inaction brings you closer to missing deadline and losing client. Or you've registered for competition. Each day of inaction means being less prepared and more likely to embarrass yourself. Let me tell you about pain tracking. This is keeping visible record of inaction. Wall calendar where you mark each day. Green for acted. Red for didn't act. The red days accumulate visibly. Seeing the pattern of red is painful. You're confronted with evidence of your inconsistency. This pain motivates action to change the pattern. Or spreadsheet where you calculate accumulated cost of inaction. Each day you don't act costs you something. Maybe it's $20 you must donate. Maybe it's compound interest on money you could have earned. Maybe it's days away from your goal. Watch the accumulated cost grow. The visible, growing number becomes painful motivator. Here's what makes pain effective. It must be present, not future. I might regret this someday. Doesn't motivate. I'm losing money right now does. I'll eventually face consequences doesn't work. I'm facing consequences today does. Humans respond to immediate pain much more than theoretical future pain. Make the pain of inaction immediate. The pain must also be certain, not possible. I might face negative outcome doesn't work. I definitely will face this consequence. Does. Possibility is easy to rationalize away. Certainty can't be avoided. Make the pain of inaction certain, and the pain must be significant enough to matter. Small discomfort is easy to accept. Large pain forces action. Find the level of pain that genuinely motivates you. For some people, $20 is significant. For others, it needs to be $100. Calibrate the pain to your actual sensitivity. Let me address concern about negativity. Isn't focusing on pain negative and demotivating? No. This is forcing mechanism for when positive motivation fails. You're not replacing positive motivation with pain. You're adding pain for inaction when positive motivation alone isn't enough. The combination of positive pull toward action and painful push away from inaction is more powerful than either alone. Think about this. You've tried making action attractive. You've visualized success. You've thought about rewards. Has this consistently motivated action? Probably not. This is why pain for inaction is necessary. It's the missing piece that makes action unavoidable. Also consider that inaction already causes pain. It causes pain of unrealized potential. Pain of watching time pass without progress. Pain of knowing you're letting yourself down. You're just making that pain immediate and explicit, instead of delayed and vague. You're bringing future regret into present consequence. Here's implementation. Choose action you've been avoiding. Create 3 forms of pain for continued inaction. Financial pain, $50 lost for each day of inaction. Social pain, daily public admission, if you don't act. Opportunity, pain, every day of inaction moves you closer to missing something that matters. Implement all 3 starting tomorrow. Now, inaction hurts enough that action becomes easier path. Don't wait until you feel motivated to create these pain mechanisms. Create them now while you're clear-headed. Then let them force action when motivation fails. When you're tempted to avoid action, remember the pain waiting if you do. Let that pain push you into action. Make inaction painful. Create immediate, certain, significant consequences for not acting. Make staying stuck hurt enough that moving forward becomes relief. Chapter 7. Create urgency. Artificially, you delay action because there's no urgency, no deadline, no immediate consequence for waiting. Tomorrow is always available, so you wait. And tomorrow, you wait again. This continues indefinitely without urgency. The solution is creating urgency artificially. You impose deadlines, create time pressure, manufacture situations where action can't be delayed. You force urgency where it doesn't naturally exist. Here's how to create urgency effectively. First, impose hard deadlines with real consequences. Not, I hope to do this by next month, but I will complete this by next Friday at 5 p.m., or I lose $100. The deadline is specific. The consequence is real. The urgency is forced. Make deadline public. Tell people. Post it online. Now you have social pressure plus consequence. The deadline becomes unavoidable. You can't quietly extend it. Everyone knows when it is. Failing to meet it means public admission of failure. Second, create artificial scarcity. Take resource you could access any time and make it time-limited. Tell yourself, I have 2 hours to complete this task, then I lose access to these tools. Or, I have this week to take action while these conditions exist, then opportunity disappears. The artificial scarcity creates urgency that wouldn't exist otherwise. Or limit your own time available. I'm only allowing myself this weekend to complete this project. After that, I'm moving to something else regardless. The self-imposed time limit creates pressure to act now rather than later. Third, stack deadlines closely. Instead of one deadline in a month, create weekly or daily deadlines. Every day has specific target. Every week has specific milestone. Now urgency is constant. You can't procrastinate today because today's deadline is here. Can't delay this week because week's deadline arrives regardless. Close stacking prevents long-term procrastination. When next deadline is always imminent, you must act continuously. The constant urgency forces consistent action. Fourth, use external commitments to create urgency. Schedule meeting, where you'll present your progress. Now you must have progress to present by meeting time. Register for event where you'll need certain skill or preparation. Now you must be ready by event date. Tell client you'll deliver by specific date. Now you must complete by then or face professional consequences. These external commitments create real urgency because consequences affect more than just you. Your professional reputation, your credibility with others, your standing in relationships. The external stakes make deadline non-negotiable. Fifth, create competitive urgency. Find someone else working towards similar goal. Make it race. Who completes first? Who achieves more by deadline? Now their progress creates urgency for yours. You don't want to be left behind. Don't want to lose the race. Competition manufactures urgency. Let me tell you about artificial time boxes. This is limiting available time for task to force efficiency and urgency. Instead of, I'll work on this until it's done, set, I have 2 hours for this task starting now. The constraint creates urgency. You must complete within time box or fail. Time boxing forces prioritization. You can't do everything in limited time, so you must choose what matters most. This focusing effect, combined with urgency, creates productive action that open-ended time doesn't. Here's powerful urgency creator. The diminishing countdown. Post publicly how many days until your deadline. Update daily. 27 days until launch. 26 days until launch. 25 days. The visible countdown creates increasing urgency as days decrease. Others watching creates social pressure to be ready when countdown reaches 0. Or countdown hours instead of days for imminent deadlines. 48 hours until presentation. 36 hours until presentation. 24 hours. The hour-by-hour countdown creates intense urgency, makes deadline feel immediate and unavoidable. Let me address something important. Artificial urgency must feel real to you. If you know you can extend deadline without consequence, urgency is fake and won't work. This is why consequences and public commitment are crucial. They make artificial urgency feel real, because consequences of missing deadline are real. When you set deadline of Friday with $100 stake and public commitment, that deadline feels real even though you created it artificially. The realness comes from real consequences, not from external imposition. You can create this realness through your commitment design. Think about projects with true external deadlines versus self-imposed deadlines. External ones get done. Self-imposed ones slip repeatedly. Why? External ones have real consequences. Self-imposed ones can be revised without consequence. Your artificial urgency must mimic external urgency by having real consequences. Here are specific urgency structures. First, the sprint. Commit to completing specific project in short, intense time period. 1 week, 3 days, 24 hours. The compressed timeline creates massive urgency. You have no time for delay or distraction. Must act intensively to finish in time. Second, the hard launch date. Pick specific date for launching, announcing, or delivering something. Make it public. Non-negotiable. Ready or not, it happens that day. Now all work has urgent deadline of launch date. Can't delay because date is fixed and public. Third, the daily deadline. Every day has specific target you must hit. End of day is deadline. Miss it. Face immediate consequence. Daily deadlines create constant urgency. No room for "I'll catch up tomorrow" because tomorrow has its own deadline. Fourth, the tournament structure. Multiple people or teams working toward same goal with specific completion deadline. First to finish wins. Others lose. Competitive deadline creates urgency through desire to win and fear of losing. Here's implementation. Choose important action you've been delaying. Create artificial urgency. Set specific deadline. Add real consequence for missing it. Make it public. Stack additional intermediate deadlines. Add competitive element if possible. Create situation where delay is impossible and action is urgent. Then submit to urgency. Don't extend deadline when it feels hard. Don't give yourself more time. Let urgency force action. Let time pressure overcome resistance. Complete under urgency, even if imperfect. Over time, you'll develop ability to act with urgency. Currently, you probably wait until real urgency exists, then scramble. With practice, you'll learn to create urgency proactively and use it to force early action. This transforms you from last-minute scrambler to consistent executor. Create urgency artificially. Impose deadlines with consequences. Stack deadlines closely. Use external commitments. Make urgency constant and unavoidable. Chapter 8. Start before you're ready. You're waiting to be ready, but readiness never comes. You'll never feel fully prepared, fully confident, fully equipped. If you wait for readiness, you wait forever. The solution is starting before you're ready. This sounds reckless. It feels wrong. Your brain screams that you need more preparation. But starting before ready is how all progress happens. It's how skills develop, how confidence builds, how anything significant gets accomplished. Let me explain why you feel unready. Your brain imagines all potential problems, all ways you might fail, all things you don't know yet. This generates feeling of unreadiness. But this feeling doesn't reflect reality. It reflects your brain's automatic caution, its preference for safety over growth. Here's the truth. You're more ready than you feel. You know more than you think. You can handle more than your fear suggests. The feeling of unreadiness is inflated by your brain's protective tendency. Don't trust the feeling. Trust the objective assessment of what you actually need to start. What do you actually need to start? Usually, much less than you think. To start writing, you need blank page and something to say. To start business, you need one potential customer and one service you can provide. To start learning skill, you need basic access to practice. These minimal requirements are usually met. Your feeling of unreadiness comes from comparing your current state to imagined mastery, not to what starting actually requires. Here's how to start before you're ready. First, identify minimum viable start. What's the smallest action you could take that counts as starting? Not what you wish you could do. What you actually can do right now with what you have. That's your start. Do that today. You don't need perfect plan. You need first step. You don't need complete skill set. You need basic capability. You don't need ideal conditions. You need adequate conditions. Minimum viable start is almost always available. Your brain pretends it isn't to keep you safe. Second, embrace imperfect action. You will do things badly at first. Your first attempts will be clumsy. Your early work will be weak. Accept this. Everyone's first work is weak. The difference between people who progress and people who don't is willingness to produce weak work while developing capability. Do it badly. Put out imperfect work. Make mistakes publicly. This feels uncomfortable because you want to appear competent. But appearing competent while not starting prevents actual competence from developing. Actual competence comes from being willing to be incompetent initially. Third, declare yourself ready arbitrarily. Stop waiting for feeling of readiness. Just declare, I'm ready now, even though you don't feel it. This declaration is act of will, not assessment of state. You choose to be ready. You start, despite feelings saying otherwise. Sounds false? It's not. Ready is not objective state. It's decision to begin despite uncertainty. Successful people aren't more ready when they start. They just start despite not being ready. You can do same thing. Fourth, use 5-second rule. When you think about starting, count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then start immediately. Don't think more. Don't analyze. Don't reconsider. Just begin. This interrupts overthinking and forces action before resistance can stop you. The 5 seconds prevents your brain from talking you out of starting. It bypasses the, "but I'm not ready," objection by not giving that objection time to form. Count and act. Repeat daily until starting becomes automatic. Fifth, schedule start time and start regardless of readiness. Tuesday at 10 a.m., you start. No matter how ready you feel. No matter how prepared you are. Time arrives. You begin. This removes readiness as prerequisite. Time is prerequisite. When time comes, starting happens. Let me tell you what happens when you start before ready. Initially, it's uncomfortable. You're doing something you feel unprepared for. You make mistakes. Face your incompetence. This is difficult. But something important happens. You begin learning through doing. Skills develop through application. Confidence builds through action. Problems you anticipated don't materialize. Problems you didn't anticipate, but can handle, do appear. Within days or weeks, you realize you're more ready now than you were. Not because you prepared more, because you started and learned through starting. The readiness you waited for arrives through action, not through preparation. Think about learning to swim. You can study swimming indefinitely, but you won't feel ready to swim until you actually get in water and practice. The feeling of readiness comes from doing, not from preparing to do. All skills work this way. You become ready by starting before ready. Here's what holding back until ready costs you. Time. Every day spent preparing is day not spent progressing. Opportunity. Others start before they're ready and gain experience you're not gaining. Momentum. Starting creates momentum. Waiting doesn't. Confidence. Acting despite fear builds confidence. Waiting for confidence before acting doesn't. The cost of starting before ready is temporary discomfort and imperfect early results. The cost of waiting to be ready is permanent stagnation. Which cost seems worse? Let me address the fear that starting before ready will lead to catastrophic failure. This fear is inflated. Most failures from starting too early are small and recoverable. You produce weak work. You make mistakes. You face learning curve. None of this is catastrophic. All of it is valuable learning. Catastrophic failure usually comes from scaling too fast, not from starting too early. Starting small before you're ready is safe. You can learn and adjust with minimal stakes. Waiting until you feel ready, then launching big, is actually riskier because you haven't tested and learned. Here's your action step. Identify something you've been waiting to feel ready for. Assess what minimum viable start would be. Schedule specific time to start. When that time comes, start regardless of how ready you feel. Do it imperfectly. Make mistakes. Learn through doing. After 2 weeks of starting before ready, assess. You'll find you're more capable than you felt. Your early fears didn't materialize. Your imperfect action is better than perfect inaction would have been. This experience will reduce your need to feel ready before starting. Over time, starting before ready becomes habit. You develop comfort with discomfort, with being beginner, with producing imperfect work. This habit is incredibly valuable. It removes major barrier to action. Most people never start because they never feel ready. You start anyway. This gives you enormous advantage. Start before you're ready. Don't wait for feeling of preparedness. Begin with minimum viable start. Embrace imperfect action. Learn through doing, instead of preparing to do. Chapter 9. Take action. Despite fear. Fear is probably the biggest barrier to action. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of success. Fear of discovering you're not capable. Fear of discovering you are. These fears keep you stuck more effectively than any external obstacle. The traditional advice is to eliminate fear before acting. Build confidence first. Prepare until fear goes away. Convince yourself you'll succeed. This doesn't work because fear doesn't disappear through thought. Fear only decreases through action that proves the feared outcome doesn't occur. The solution is acting despite fear. Not waiting for fear to decrease before acting. Acting while afraid. Moving forward with fear present. This sounds impossible. It's actually the only path forward. Let me explain what fear is really doing. Fear is your brain's alarm system. It evolved to protect you from actual danger. But in modern life, it triggers for things that aren't dangerous. Social embarrassment, potential failure, uncertainty. These aren't threats to your survival, but your brain treats them like they are. When you consider action that involves risk, your brain generates fear. This fear feels like accurate assessment of danger. It's actually automatic caution response. Your brain doesn't distinguish between real danger and uncomfortable growth. It treats both as threats to avoid. Here's the key insight. The fear you feel before action is usually disproportionate to actual risk. You feel terrified of starting. But the worst realistic outcome is manageable. You imagine catastrophic failure. But most failures are minor and recoverable. Your fear is inflated. Reality is usually much less frightening than your anticipation. This means you can't trust fear to tell you whether action is safe. Fear isn't accurate risk assessment. It's automatic overcaution. You must act despite it to discover that what you feared rarely happens. Here's how to act despite fear. First, acknowledge fear without obeying it. When fear arises, notice it. Name it. I'm feeling fear about starting this. Don't suppress it or pretend it isn't there. But also don't obey it. Acknowledge and proceed anyway. I'm afraid and I'm starting anyway. This separates feeling fear from being controlled by fear. You can feel afraid while choosing to act. The feeling doesn't have to determine the action. Second, zoom out to realistic worst case. Fear makes you imagine terrible outcomes. Counter this by deliberately assessing realistic worst case. What would actually happen if you failed? Really. Not your catastrophic imagination. Actual consequences. Usually they're manageable. You might feel embarrassed. You might waste some time and money. You might have to try again. These outcomes aren't pleasant, but they're survivable. They're worth risking for the potential of success. When you see realistic worst case is manageable, fear decreases enough to act. Third, use exposure gradually. If action feels too frightening, break it into smaller steps. Take smallest step you can manage despite fear. Then next, small step. Then next. Gradual exposure builds tolerance for fear. But don't use this as excuse to avoid starting. The point is smaller steps forward, not more delay. Each small step, despite small fear, builds capability to take bigger steps, despite bigger fear. Fourth, act quickly before fear builds. Fear amplifies the longer you sit with it. When you first think about taking action, fear is relatively small. But if you sit and think and analyze and worry, fear grows. It feeds on attention and anticipation. Instead, act within minutes of deciding. Don't give fear time to grow. Decide to do something, then do it immediately. This prevents anticipatory fear from becoming overwhelming. Fifth, have pre-planned response to fear. When I feel fear, I will take action immediately. Not, when I feel fear, I will analyze it. Not, when I feel fear, I will prepare more. Action is the response. This predecision removes in-the-moment choice. Fear triggers action, not hesitation. Let me tell you about fear setting. This is technique from Tim Ferriss. You explicitly imagine what you're afraid of. Write it down in detail. Then write the probability it will happen. Then write how you'd handle it if it did. This process reveals that feared outcomes are unlikely and manageable. Example: you're afraid of starting business and failing completely. Fear setting. What does complete failure look like? You lose money. You invested. You have to return to job you already have. You feel embarrassed. Probability? If you start smart and small, probably low. How would you handle it? You'd recover the lost money within months at your job. You'd learn from the experience. You'd try again with better information. Suddenly, the failure you feared seems manageable. This doesn't eliminate fear, but it reduces it enough to act. Here's what happens when you repeatedly act despite fear. First, you prove to yourself that you can act while afraid. This is powerful self-knowledge. You're not paralyzed by fear. You're capable of moving despite it. Second, you discover that feared outcomes rarely occur. Your actions usually work out better than you feared. This teaches your brain that fear is overcalibrated. Third, the fear response diminishes over time. Your brain learns that this type of action doesn't lead to danger. The alarm quiets. You still feel some fear, but it's less intense and less paralyzing. Fourth, you build identity as courageous person. Someone who acts despite fear. This identity becomes self-reinforcing. I'm someone who doesn't let fear stop me. Think about people who regularly do frightening things. Public speakers, entrepreneurs, athletes. They still feel fear, but they've trained themselves to act despite it. Fear is signal, not stop sign. They acknowledge it and proceed. You can develop same capability. Let me address the belief that you need to eliminate fear before acting. This is backwards. You eliminate fear by acting. Action is both the cure for and despite fear. Every time you act despite fear, you reduce future fear of similar actions. You can't think your way out of fear. You must act your way out. Here's your implementation. Identify action you're avoiding due to fear. Name the specific fear. What exactly are you afraid of? Assess realistic worst case. How likely is it? How would you handle it? Then take smallest possible action despite fear. Within 24 hours. Not when you feel ready, while still afraid. Notice that you survive. That feared outcome didn't occur. That acting while afraid is possible. This experience is evidence for future actions despite fear. Stack these experiences. Each one makes next one easier. Over weeks and months of acting despite fear, you transform. From someone paralyzed by fear, to someone who moves through it. From someone who lets fear determine actions, to someone who acts regardless. This transformation is crucial. Most significant achievements require acting despite substantial fear. Capability to do so is prerequisite for success. Take action despite fear. Don't wait for fear to disappear. Acknowledge it and proceed. Act quickly before fear builds. Discover that feared outcomes rarely occur. Build tolerance for acting while afraid. Chapter 10. Maintain momentum. Once started, starting is crucial. But maintaining momentum once started is equally important. Many people finally force themselves to start, then lose momentum after days or weeks. The initial action doesn't compound into sustained progress. The problem is they think starting is the hard part. Once started, they assume momentum will carry them. It doesn't. Momentum must be maintained deliberately. Without maintenance, resistance reasserts itself, and you stop. Here's how to maintain momentum once you've started. First, never miss twice in a row. This is the golden rule. You'll occasionally miss your committed action. That's human. But never miss twice consecutively. Missing once is mistake. Missing twice is new pattern. New pattern is momentum lost. When you miss Monday, you absolutely must do it Tuesday. When you skip one day, you cannot skip the next. This rule prevents single misses from becoming streaks of inaction. It maintains thread of momentum even through difficulty. Second, track visibly. Mark every day you complete your action. Calendar with X's. Habit tracker app. Spreadsheet. Whatever makes your streak visible. Seeing the streak grow creates motivation to maintain it. Seeing gap after miss creates urgency to resume immediately. Visible tracking also shows patterns. You see when you tend to miss, when momentum is strongest, when it weakens. This awareness lets you defend momentum proactively. Third, reduce friction ruthlessly. Every barrier between you and action is opportunity for momentum to break. Remove these barriers systematically. Prepare the night before. Eliminate decisions. Make action as easy as possible. If your action requires multiple steps, preparation, or setup, momentum dies. Simplify until action is nearly automatic. Example: if morning workout requires finding workout clothes, then deciding what exercises to do, then setting up equipment, friction is high. Momentum will break. Instead, lay out clothes night before. Follow same routine every day. Keep equipment ready. Now action is simple. Less friction, more momentum. Fourth, maintain accountability throughout. Don't just have accountability for starting. Maintain it for continuing. Weekly check-ins where you show continued progress. Daily posts showing streak. Ongoing financial stakes for consistency. The accountability that forced initial action must continue to maintain momentum. People often create accountability for starting, then drop it once they begin. This is when you need it most. Initial enthusiasm carries first days. Accountability carries the difficult middle when enthusiasm fades. Fifth, celebrate small wins, but don't rest on them. Acknowledge progress. I did it 10 days in a row. That's good. But don't let achievement become excuse to stop. I did it 10 days. I deserve a break. That break breaks momentum. Celebrate without stopping. Acknowledge progress while continuing. Let me tell you about the momentum plateau. After initial weeks, progress feels slower. You've gotten quick wins early. Now you're in the grind. Results aren't as obvious. Excitement has faded. This is where most people quit. They mistake plateau for failure. Plateau is normal. It doesn't mean approach isn't working. It means you're in the phase where real transformation happens. Early excitement is nice. Sustained effort through plateau is where results compound. You must maintain momentum through this phase. How? Focus on process, not results. Commit to doing the action regardless of visible results. Track the action itself as the win. I took action today is success, regardless of outcome. This process focus maintains momentum when results plateau. Sixth, adjust approach without breaking momentum. If action isn't working, adjust how you do it. But don't stop doing it. Modify the specifics while maintaining the habit. Breaking momentum to redesign entire approach usually means momentum disappears and you never restart. Better to maintain imperfect action while gradually improving it, than to stop in pursuit of perfect approach. Momentum with adjustment beats stopping for optimization. 7th, pre-commit to minimum viable action. On days when full action feels impossible, what's minimum you can do? Define this in advance. Bad days happen. Having predefined minimum prevents them from breaking momentum. Can't do full workout? Do 10 minutes. Can't write full post? Write 1 paragraph. Minimum action maintains momentum thread. 8th, build streaks into identity. After enough consistency, it's not just, I do this thing. It's, I'm someone who does this thing. The action becomes part of who you are. Identity-level integration creates automatic momentum. You don't need external forcing, because the action is now internal identity. This takes time, months of consistency, but it's the ultimate momentum maintenance. When action is identity, skipping feels like betraying yourself. Strong motivation to maintain momentum. Let me talk about resistance resurgence. Even with good momentum, resistance will resurge. Life disrupts routine. Stress increases. Motivation dips. Suddenly the action that was feeling automatic feels hard again. This is normal. Don't interpret it as failure. It's just resistance reasserting itself. Response: return to forcing mechanisms. Reinstate stakes. Increase accountability. Remove more friction. Use the tools that created initial action to restore momentum. Resistance resurgence isn't permanent unless you let it stop you. Here's what long-term momentum maintenance looks like. It's not constant high motivation. It's consistent action despite varying motivation. It's adjusting approaches without breaking commitment. It's acknowledging difficulty while continuing anyway. It's using forcing mechanisms when needed and identity when sufficient. It's never missing twice. It's doing minimums when full effort isn't possible. It's celebrating progress while not resting on it. This sounds like work. It is work, but it's work that compounds. Each day of momentum makes next day easier. Each week builds on previous. After months, the action that required significant forcing becomes relatively automatic. The momentum that needed active maintenance becomes self-sustaining to large degree. But you only reach that point by maintaining momentum through the difficult middle when it would be easy to quit. Here's your implementation. You've started. Good. Now commit to not missing twice. Set up visible tracking. Remove all friction you can. Maintain active accountability. Define your minimum viable action. Pre-commit to doing minimum when full action isn't possible. Adjust approach as needed without breaking pattern. Check in weekly on momentum state. Is it strong or weakening? If weakening, intensify forcing mechanisms before momentum breaks. Don't wait for motivation to return. Force continuation. 3 months of maintained momentum will transform the action from forced to habitual. 6 months will make it feel like part of who you are. A year will make it automatic. But only if you maintain through early months when stopping would be easy. Maintain momentum once started. Never miss twice. Track visibly. Remove friction. Sustain accountability. Celebrate while continuing. Adjust without stopping. Build identity through consistency. We've explored 10 powerful mechanisms for forcing action. Understanding why you don't act. Creating consequences that demand action. Eliminating escape routes. Using commitment devices. Building aggressive accountability. Making inaction painful. Creating artificial urgency. Starting before ready. Acting despite fear. And maintaining momentum once started. These aren't gentle suggestions. They're forcing mechanisms. They work when motivation fails. They function when willpower depletes. They create action when everything else leaves you stuck. But understanding these mechanisms changes nothing. Only implementing them creates action. You can know everything in this audiobook and still be paralyzed by inaction if you don't actually use what you learned. So here's the question. Will you implement? Will you actually create consequences for yourself? Will you actually eliminate your escape routes? Will you actually build demanding accountability? Will you actually start before ready and act despite fear? Most people won't. They'll understand the concepts. They'll agree they're effective. They'll intend to use them someday. Then they'll continue waiting for motivation, hoping for readiness, preparing endlessly, taking no meaningful action. You can be different. You can actually implement these forcing mechanisms. You can actually break through in action. You can actually force yourself to do what you know you should do. Let me remind you why this matters. You already know what you should do. The knowledge isn't the problem. The action is the problem. The gap between knowing and doing is what's keeping you stuck. That gap won't close through more learning. It closes through forcing action despite resistance. Think about where you are right now. You have goals you've been thinking about but not pursuing, projects you've been planning but not starting, changes you've been contemplating but not making. How long have these things been on your list? Months? Years? Without intervention, they'll stay there. More months will pass. More years. You'll keep thinking about them, keep planning them, keep waiting to feel ready, but you'll never actually do them. Not because they're impossible, because you haven't learned to force yourself to act. This pattern ends when you implement forcing mechanisms, when you create real consequences for inaction, when you eliminate escape routes, when you start before ready, when you act despite fear. These mechanisms break the pattern. They force action when waiting would be comfortable. Here's what I want you to do. Today. Not tomorrow. Not after you've thought about it more. Not when you feel ready. Today. Choose one goal or project you've been delaying. Just one. Don't try to force action on everything simultaneously. Start with one important thing. Then implement 3 forcing mechanisms for it. Create financial stakes. If you don't take specific action by specific deadline, you lose specific amount of money to cause you hate. Make it public. Tell people specifically what you're committing to and by when. Eliminate escape routes. Remove the easy alternatives that let you avoid the hard work. Do this setup today. Actually create the commitments. Actually tell people. Actually remove the alternatives. Don't just plan to do it. Do it now. Make the forcing mechanisms real and binding before resistance can stop you. Then tomorrow, when it's time to act, these mechanisms will force you. The money at stake will push you. The social commitment will pressure you. The eliminated alternatives will leave you no escape. You'll act not because you feel motivated but because not acting is worse. After 1 week of forced action, assess. You've done more than the previous months of waiting. You've proven to yourself that forcing works. You've built initial momentum. Now, maintain it. Keep the forcing mechanisms active. Add new ones if needed. Don't let momentum break. After 1 month, you'll be in fundamentally different position. You'll have real progress instead of endless planning. You'll have evidence of capability instead of hopes about potential. You'll have momentum instead of stagnation. After 6 months of forced action, you'll transform, not just in results achieved, in identity formed. You'll become someone who acts despite resistance, someone who doesn't wait for readiness, someone who forces progress regardless of feelings. But this only happens if you start, if you implement, if you actually use these forcing mechanisms instead of just understanding them. Let me tell you what will happen if you don't implement. 6 months will pass. A year will pass. You'll still have the same goals unachieved, the same projects unstarted, the same changes unmade. You'll have more knowledge about forcing action, but no actual forced action, no results, no progress, no transformation. The gap between these two futures is implementation, actually creating forcing mechanisms, actually making them real and binding, actually submitting to them, even when uncomfortable. Here's the final truth. You're capable of taking action. You're not broken or uniquely resistant. You don't lack some special quality. You just haven't forced yourself effectively. Resistance is normal. Fear is normal. Feeling unready is normal. Everyone experiences these things. Successful people aren't free from resistance. They've learned to act despite it. They've developed forcing mechanisms that override resistance. They've built systems that make action inevitable. You can develop the same capability. Stop waiting to feel motivated. Stop hoping for readiness. Stop preparing endlessly. Start forcing action. Create mechanisms that make action unavoidable. Override your resistance. Break through your fear. Start before ready. Act despite discomfort. The knowledge in this audiobook is valueless without implementation. But with implementation, it's transformative. These forcing mechanisms work. They've worked for countless people. They'll work for you if you actually use them. Choose your one goal. Implement 3 forcing mechanisms today. Start tomorrow. Maintain for 1 week. Then 1 month. Then 6 months. Watch as forced action becomes natural action. As resistance decreases. As momentum builds. As results compound. Stop waiting. Start forcing. How to force yourself to take action isn't a theoretical question. It's practical challenge with practical solutions. You now have those solutions. The only question is whether you'll use them. Force yourself to take action. Not someday. Not when ready. Now. Begin.